Hello, guys. How are you? Crypt is here. Thank you for being here. Hello, Bossy. Hello, CGK. Hello, everyone. We're gonna have Skip Jansen here. I can see him on the backstage. I'm gonna try to put him live here. Hello, Skip. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Cryptex. How are you?
I'm very fine, man. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for accepting the invitation, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate the offer. Looking forward to it.
Cool, man. I want to say thank you also to Dan, Curious Contrarian. He was the one who make this contact possible. So thanks to Dan for that, man. So hello, Chris. How are you? So Skip, let's start with let's. Can you tell us something about you? Can you please introduce yourself a little bit? Uh, I'm pretty sure everyone here knows you well, but just in case.
Yeah, you want me to tell you kind of how I got involved in the case, when, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, where are you from? Without compromising your privacy, no.
Well,
Everything you can say.
I think pretty much everybody knows. And my accent gives it away. I'm from the South. Grew up and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. I live in Destin, Florida now, and have for the last, or lived in Panhandle, Florida for the last 25 years. And Um, got involved in the case in 2020 when all the stuff was going on with COVID, and um, it's kind of been a whirlwind. Actually, it was probably less than a year after I started following the case. I was made an appearance. I was asked to make an appearance on a popular podcast, True Crime Garage, and talked about a theory I had, and uh, so I guess anything noteworthy about me kind of originated from there.
Yeah. At the time, where were you in like online? Let's say, were you in like in YouTube? Were you in Facebook and Reddit? So what
Yeah,
was like your platform?
yeah. I'm not on YouTube. I don't have a YouTube channel, or at least I don't have a YouTube channel that I participate with doing videos and lives and stuff. But I started out, joined Reddit in August of 2020. Um, and like I said, it wasn't long after that I was on the True Crime Garage podcast. But that's how I initially got into the case. Well, I joined Reddit, started talking about the case, just making comments and watching everything and looking over what other people thought. And actually, when I how I came up, a lot of people understand or know about the theory, the DP theory that I was the architect of, I suppose. It started out, give you a little background on that. It started out with the first thing I did when I started following the case was I looked into the sketch change, the April 2019 press conference, and since I thought that was important, simply because a sketch change is that's a very rare thing to happen in a case. So I knew something pretty significant must have happened, to for them to have the impetus to make a sketch change, just for that. I mean, for that reason, it just doesn't happen very often. I know that you hear things and people normalize things, and they like, oh well, that's not that big a deal. Well, actually it is. The sketch change is a huge thing. And so I started looking into that and trying to explain why it maybe the sketch change would happen, and listening to what Doug Carter said. And I came up with the theory based on it always had a underlying aspect or theme of deception, and where logic took me was that, hey, the girls were deceived. Robert Ives says the crime scene was staged, so that's a form of deception. So I started looking into what other things would BG have done to continue with this theme of deception. So we knew there were at least two witnesses at that time. So I, again, the logic was, well, he would probably come forward to explain his existence, because if somebody saw him, it's likely he saw them as well. And he was aware that he had been seen. So from there, that's when I started looking into who was there that day, who were people known to be on the trails, because that was the core or the root of the uh, theory was that it was somebody known to be on the trails, somebody who had come forward uh, to explain their existence there that day. And from there, I started thinking about, well, could it have been a witness who came forward? That would have been part of that, like I said, that underlying theme of deception. So that's how it all came together. So I started looking into who was there, realized there was a younger guy that was there who looked very similar to the sketch. And so I started looking into it and found that some of the information that was being put out about him, whether it was from him or friends of his or other people following the case, there were just a lot of different stories, and none of them really made sense, whether it be with the timeline or whether it be with who he was with, where he parked, what time, all of that. And so that's how the DP theory came into existence.
Okay. Before going into your theory, which I find very interesting, by the way, uh, can you tell us something about DP before the date of the event? So who was DP? Is he a local? Is someone who lives in or who lived in who used to live in Delphi at the time? How what was his age? Was he friends with Abby and Libby? Was he going to the same school of Abby and Libby? Do we know something about him before the date of the events?
Yeah, he's from the area, from Delphi. Went to school in Delphi. Uh, Went to Delphi Community School. Knew the girls. Had even mentioned that he had ridden the school bus with one of the girls. So I guess talking about Libby, and so knew the families. He's from a fairly well known family in the area. His uncle is on the he's like city councilman. He's on the city council, and so his family's well known. He was 22 years old at that time. So again, that was part. Then that fell into what part of the theory, because when they released the new sketch and gave out the new information, it was they said it was someone between 18 and 40. And so again, that was something that fell into the theory that kind of corroborated that. And so um, that's pretty much what his background is. He's a local and has lived there, I think, most of his life.
Okay, and we are gonna go in detail with your theory, but before going into those details, can you tell us, like, in a very general way, what is your theory, like, in one sentence, something like that, and then we're gonna go into the details.
Where my belief is now, is that my belief?
Well, at the beginning and now, yeah.
Well,
How?
here's the thing that's kind of unusual, is the theory actually mirrors a lot of what Richard Allen's circumstances are. Okay, that was, you know, again, somebody known to be there, somebody who came forward to explain himself, somebody who may have been put in a witness category as opposed to being a potential POI. And so um and I got a lot of obviously the theory had a lot of pushback. um and that's and that's one of the things I've noticed about this case, is that people, instead of, and very few people came to me and said, I like your theory, but I think maybe you just got the wrong guy, because there's some things about it that don't add up with this guy, but it could be somebody else. Nobody really did that. Everybody wanted. It's like they throw the baby out with the bathwater. They don't get rid of the theory. They get rid of. I mean, they get rid of the theory because of the person of interest, and
Mhm.
so because I think there's been a lot of good theories out there. I think the Ron Logan theory was certainly uh, a theory that should have been looked into. I think the geocache theory made a lot of sense. But again, those theories also come with POIs. And so if somebody doesn't like your POI, they throw the theory out and discredit you. And so I got a lot of that. And being new to true crime, the true crime genre, I didn't really understand it, I suppose, at the time. And so, um, I did. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't have some support. I did. I had a lot of support, but there were just a lot of people that, but and the weird thing about it, ironic thing about it is it's some of the same people who said the theory was stupid and he wouldn't have come forward are the same people who say that Richard Allen's guilty simply because he was there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, look, I wouldn't be the first one to say there's a lot of hypocrisy involved in this case. I mean, in this community, but it certainly happened with me for sure.
Yeah, and of course, at the time you you threw out your theory to the public, let's say. At
Yeah.
that time, we didn't know anything about the clients. We didn't know anything about Richard Allen, etc. How did your theory evolve? If that's the case with the new discoveries, did your theory change over time, or is basically the same theory? What's the situation there?
Um, that's a good question. Things change over time, like you mentioned. I never bought into the Kagan Klein theory simply because of this. Is I have a journalism background, and so I can see when somebody has an agenda and they're trying to put out information, and they're trying, they have an agenda, and so the information they put out is very narrowly focused, and they don't want any correspondence back on about it. They don't want to have anybody interact with them. They just, well, here it is, believe it because we're telling you. So the reason with that is law enforcement had gone 5 years and not said hardly a word, given the public hardly anything about the case. And all of a sudden they let the Klein thing play out in public and had a well-known podcast basically narrate the thing for us, like, hey, here it is, hey, here it is, and that obviously that turned into the red Jeep thing and all that. But
Mhm.
I thought that was very strange that they would not say anything for 5 years, but let a river search it was almost like a photo opportunity for them. It was like, why do you go 5 years and don't say a word to the public? You don't ask, you don't want the public to know anything because of quote unquote integrity of the investigation or quote unquote protecting witnesses, whatever it may be. But all of a sudden you're letting this scenario play out in public for everybody to see. I mean, are you trying to sell it? Is that what they were trying to do? And that's just the way it seemed to me. So, other things came up, other theories came up, but there was never one that I latched on to after DP. Um, and then when Richard Allen was arrested, obviously things changed. I don't believe DP is BG anymore. I do believe that his role in the investigation, has never been told truthfully, and
Mhm.
so recently I've been trying to tell that. Some people may not think it's really relevant to what's going on now or has much significance, but I do because I think it shows the uh, I don't know. I'll talk about deception. I think it shows deception from law enforcement that the truthfulness that they've put out about the investigation hasn't always been truthful.
Mhm. So at the beginning, your idea was that DP was BG, but that's not your theory
Yeah,
anymore,
that well,
if I
it
understand
was
well.
like I said. Yeah, I always said it was just a theory. The core root of the theory was, like I said earlier, somebody known to be on the trail, somebody who came forward, somebody who might look like the sketch, because that was trying to explain the sketch change. Why would you put out a second sketch? Something pretty significant had to happen. So why would you put out a second sketch unless you were pretty sure that's that's who, that's for sure what this guy looked like, because if you weren't sure, no reason to change, right? Something had to happen. New information had to come forward to lead to the change. And so that was all of the theory was basic to explain those things. Um, and so that was part of it.
Yeah, and do you think there's a connection between DP and Richard Allen?
I have no idea.
No.
I really don't. I mean, for me, I'll be honest with you, Cryptex is, for me, it's come down to whether you believe law enforcement in this, in what's going on. Because like I said, I've been following it since 2020, and I've never understood why there has been so much misinformation put out there
Yeah,
intentionally.
so much confusion here, man.
Yeah, and why is there so much confusion? And why why does every piece of information now that comes out have to come with a narrative? And most of the narratives are false. I'll give you an example. When people would try to, when Betsy Blair everybody became aware that Betsy Blair was one of the witnesses, right?
Right.
There was a narrative put out that, well, the reason they changed the sketch was because she insisted on it. Well,
And that was one of my questions. So
yeah. I
you
mean,
were ahead
first of
of
all,
my mind. Go ahead.
yeah, that's ridiculous. Law enforcement is not going to change a sketch because someone insists on it, right? So, and then we find out and Andy Baldwin's, I don't know if it was his questioning or cross examination or whatever it was with Holman in the recent July hearings, was that she had to be forced to come forward and do a sketch. So, does that sound like someone who was insisting that theirs right? Doesn't to me. Now, if you have to be forced, they made it sound, and I say they, okay, take that for however you want to, but they said that, she came forward early on and insisted that she was right, and just spent her, kept knocking on the door. Hey, my sketch is right. Well, it turns out she was forced by the law enforcement to do it, and Holman admitted that. So how is she insisting if she doesn't want to be a part of it? Now, that doesn't make any sense. Another thing is, again, that's one of those narratives that a false narrative that's put out that I don't understand why. Another one was, well, when people were explaining the confessions, they're like, well, Richard Allen started the confessions when he saw Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're led to believe that it was because he found religion. So which is it? I mean,
He found God.
yeah, which is it? I mean, the stories keep coming out and they keep being false. So that's my point about, what do you believe that
Yeah.
what about law enforcement's done, that you believe? How much do you? For me, it comes down to that. It comes down to whether you think they've been forthright, honest,
Mm-hmm.
genuine in statements, whether they've been that way with, giving Discovery, and and it's hard to overlook losing 70 days. I know,
That's
law.
one of the worst thing in this case, man. It's unacceptable.
I
That's
mean, that's unheard of. But again, I go back to, like I mentioned earlier, people will try to normalize that stuff.
yeah.
Oh yeah, that happens. That kind of stuff happens all the time. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Like
Sketch changes aren't normal. Losing 70 days of interviews with witnesses is not normal. Okay.
agree.
And so, is that the reason? Does that answer my question about why there's so many false narratives and why there's so much misinformation that's being put out?
Yeah, and at one point, incompetence. Okay, it may
Yeah.
happen, but one time, two times, three times, but 4 or 5 times, there's a line between incompetence and corruption or something weird
Yeah.
going on. I agree with you. And when you were talking about the sketches, the change of sketches and the normalization, let's say, uh, I agree with you. People are trying to make sense of that, saying that okay, different witness, they can distinguish the suspect in a different way, trying to make some weird theories. And come on, it doesn't make sense. After 2 years of investigation, they come with a new sketch with totally different to the first one. It's really crazy. I don't understand that, and I cannot make sense of that, man. It's
Yeah,
really crazy.
I don't think any of us can, and that's one of the problems. Yeah, you mentioned Dan earlier, Curious Contrarian, and I was on his show recently, and as you
I
know,
saw I saw that show.
yeah.
That show. It was awesome, man. And that's why I wanted to contact you and to have you here, because I enjoyed so much that conversation, man. In Dan and channels, that was really great.
Well, I appreciate it. I spent a lot of time on trying to find out what the truth is about the first couple of years of the investigation. Because we know now that there's 70 days of witness testimony that's gone, it's been lost, whatever. Um, we are spoke we the PC. What I was trying to do was to have all the information I had, then corroborate information, and comparing it to the PCA and what the PCA says, and how much of that stuff lines up. And to be honest with you, very little of it does, because there the PCA and even the some of the stuff law enforcement's talked about was they want us to believe that Betsy Blair and Sarah Carborough were the primary witnesses all along. They weren't. And I showed it on Dan's show. They were not the primary witnesses for the first 2 years.
Mhm.
They were brought in April of 2019 for a reason. And it was, I mean, they were, I mean, it's really, there's so much like stuff like that that's happened in this case. It's hard to believe, why don't you, why is, does the truth, why is it problematic for the truth to be out there about what happened those first 2 years?
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
in your opinion, you're solid in the, I don't know if I can say the fact, but do you really think that DP is the one responsible for the first sketch, right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think he is the, uh, responsible for the old bridge guy sketch, and it was the original exit witness. I think to set their timeline, they wanted to have witnesses that saw him enter, witnesses that saw him leave. He was the one who saw him exit, and I tried to show in there how, with the blue flags they had put up from the crime scene back up the path to the trails, that law enforcement believed that bridge guy left via the trails back toward the Freedom Bridge, and they
Hmm.
believed that for the first 2 years. And so, that that's the thing. Now it is all the PC. And again, going back to, like I said, trying to compare all that to PCA. The PCA shows that now it is a witness saw him at the bridge at 2 o'clock, and then another witness saw him at 3:57 out on Highway 300, and southeast of where he would have been. The two, I guess what I'm trying to say is the two stories, DP's story, seeing him at 3:15 on the trails going toward the Freedom Bridge, conflicts with Sarah Carball's testimony. She saw him at 3:57 walking on Highway 300. Okay. He wouldn't, that path wouldn't be, first of all, it wouldn't be sensible. It would, but he wouldn't have, he wouldn't have been capable of doing it, because he would have had to backtrack. Um, so, again, ask yourself, why is it important to just focus on, and that's been kind of a common theme I see, is that the prosecution wants you to focus only on these things.
Hmm.
And I understand, legal tactics, legalese, all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of why I didn't have a problem with the confessions being allowed, because the defense will be able to provide context. They'll be able to provide mental health people and law enforcement procedural and protocol people about how all that works in prisons, and giving medications and things like that, and the effects. I want everything to be out there. Let's put it all on the table and see, and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah,
all
100%.
all of the legal tactics to keep this in, throw that out, all that, it just gets a bit tiresome.
Yeah. Can you hear me? I think I'm frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry.
You're breaking up a little bit, but I can hear you.
Okay. I have a couple of problems with internet. I'm just gonna read this comment here. It's for me and for you. I'm
Okay.
trying to give a quick answer before continuing with the chat. So of course, you know that your presence here is a little bit controversial.
Yeah.
So they're asking me or asking us: did the host Cryptex and the guest Skip hear what was released tonight about Kathy Allen believing her husband's confessions? So, guys, we are not here to, I don't know, to pretend that we are right in our theories or whatever. We are just presenting different angles of this case. So the idea is not to be solid in one theory to say that we are right or not. We are just presenting a different angle of this case, and everybody is free to interpret or to think whatever you want about that. But you are free to comment and keep it in a civil way. I don't know if you want to add something here, Skip.
Yeah, no, I saw what was said about the not wearing the wedding ring and not being married, and I saw that. And I saw who it was. I don't know the gal who brought that information forth. But again, it's hard to know. I mean, is that someone's opinion? Are we talking fact here? I mean, you know, it's
Exactly.
it's funny. Probably the biggest mistake I made in this case was assuming that everybody wanted to know the truth.
Yeah, 100%, man. Uh, I had a question for you. During your research
Hmm.
about this theory you have, uh, did you contact or did you try to contact DP by, I don't know, personally or by email or by telephone? Did you have any kind of contact with him?
I did. I didn't get any response.
Okay.
I'll throw in one little interesting thing that happened because again, I'm not trying to justify anything or anything like that. I'm just telling you what happened.
Hmm.
The week prior to True Crime Garage releasing the 3 episodes that I was on, the captain, who's one of the hosts of True Crime Garage, he contacted Tobe 3 or 4 times
Oh, yeah.
because he and I had talked, and he said, "Hey, should we contact Tobe and ask him, hey, if this is something we shouldn't put out, um, we won't do it. If it affects the investigation, or if it looks like we're blaming somebody you know is innocent, we won't put it out. Let us know." Because again, I've been blamed for a lot of things, but the truth is we didn't want to blame someone who shouldn't
Hmm.
be being blamed. And of course, it was laid out as a theory, but still, we didn't want that it to be out there. So they were prepared to pull the episodes if Tobe said no, don't. He never responded back, and as a matter of fact, 2 days before the episode, Captain told him when the episodes were going to be released. I think it was August 2nd. On July 31st, he released a media blackout. He released a statement saying that law enforcement was issuing a media blackout and wasn't going to talk about any POIs going forward. Um, Now, at that time, the guy from I always forget his name. The guy who was caught in his home with the young girl that they arrested, that they thought might have some connection, ended up not going anywhere. That was going on at the time too. But we did give him the opportunity to say, "Hey, you guys are going down the wrong path here. I'd appreciate it if you didn't do it." And when he never responded to it. So, and
Okay.
that's something that we talked about before. I mean, the captain will obviously he'll obviously corroborate that information. So
I got it. And those episodes that you made with the True Crime Garage Man were awesome. I loved it.
Thank you.
I think there were no, there were three episodes, right? Under
Correct.
the bridge.
Under the bridge. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
3 episodes. Yeah,
actually,
it was
yeah,
funny
but
because when you're doing something like that, or when you're doing a podcast and you don't have any kind of audience like you guys like you have here, but so you don't really know the scope of it. Um, and I didn't, like I said, I'd been involved in true crime less than a year, and so it was just for me, it was just three guys sitting around shooting the shit, talking about the case.
yeah,
And I didn't realize it was going to be 500,000 downloads, and it was going to turn into what it did. I mean, it
half
really
million downloads.
it was 500,000 downloads. So it
Oh
was,
my god.
and so it was. I guess I just didn't ever think about it. I didn't think there were going to be that many people who heard it, and obviously the days following on Reddit and social media, I became very aware that it was a much bigger thing than I ever realized.
And actually, I was listening to those episodes, trying to prepare the show tonight with you, and I have to say, I'm not gonna lie to you. Your theory is it seems to be simple, but at the same time, it's complex because there are a lot of actors. At the beginning, we think it's only DP and that's it, but then you have the girlfriend or the allegedly girlfriend of DP, Cheyenne, flannel shirt guy, and the timeline is going up and down. It's hard to follow at one point, but it's really interesting, man. You
Well,
did a lot
thank
of
you.
research and a lot of work, man, too.
I appreciate it. That it was difficult parsing out what was real and what wasn't. There were things that I found out that had been. You know, one thing about this case too is that a lot of things have become fact, uh, default by default. Like, um, because it's said so many times. It's not true, but it's said so many times that it becomes fact, or it becomes something that people think. Um, there was never a time where Cheyenne said that she saw DP. That was something somebody. She said she saw a couple that she went to school with in Monticello. Well, he
Can,
didn't go.
can, can you come back a little bit? Who's Cheyenne, and
She's
what was she doing there at the
she
time
was
of the murders?
she went to the trails to take photos and went on the bridge and saw a friend there. I won't say the friend's names. Her initials are SD. Actually, the ironic part is that her first name and the gal that DP was with actually share the same first name, but that's one of the reasons why it's all so confusing. But
Yeah.
there was just a lot of things that were out there that I was started when I started looking into it. I started discovering that these things aren't true. How did they become this fact? That she
Hmm.
saw. She never said she saw him.
Hmm.
Um, as a matter of fact, what she said she saw wasn't him because he went to school in Delphi. So again, that was part and parcel of all this whole thing about why is there so much misinformation about this guy? Why is there so much misinformation about her? Why is there so much misinformation about everybody that was out there that day?
Hmm.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I understand. And just to come back to the initial situation, let's say, if we can call it like that. Uh, if I remember well, one of the main elements for DP to change his how can I say his statement is
Mhm.
that he was cheating to his girlfriend or something like that, right?
Well, yeah, that was again. There were a lot of things that were put out that again, they turned into fact. They were reasons explaining away why his story would have changed. Why
Hmm.
why are there 50 different versions of his story? Well, he was out there with a gal who wasn't his girlfriend as or fiance, and he wanted to hide that. It was also, let's say, there again, there were so many different stories. It also was it was there was also something floated out there about, well, he saw FSG. You know, he saw, and of course, none of that never made any sense because
Where?
what he explained seeing was not a guy in a flannel shirt. He explained seeing a guy with a scarf who was dressed similar to BG, and
Uh-huh.
was wearing a hat. McCain was not wearing a scarf. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't like everybody on the damn trails was wearing a scarf that day. I mean, so um,
Do we
you know,
know?
so
Do we know what he wearing, McCain?
I believe that's how he became flannel shirt guy because he was wearing a flannel shirt, and so I don't know how but again, there was some reason that people didn't want the others to know the truth about that.
It's weird that we don't talk too much about McCain. Huh? He was one of the persons there at the time of the murders, and we don't talk about him. What?
Right.
Right?
I think because he's never talked about it. He's never said a word. You know, I think
Right.
he and Derek German are the two that have never commented, and the two people involved that were there that day at some point and just but have never spoken. I'm not going to criticize either one of them for not because it's.
Yeah. And
I would probably, I don't know what I would do in the same circumstance, so I certainly wouldn't criticize either. But they were both involved in controversy.
mhm,
And
for sure.
so and of course not speaking probably was part of the reason there was controversy, because that leads people to come up with their own stories, and of course their own stories are going to fit their agendas and what they believe and all that. So but there it was he supposedly saw FSG. Well, when I started looking into this, I was like, okay, I've heard that he supposedly saw FSG, and that's the reason he recanted on his original statement. Okay,
Mhm, mhm,
that was based when I joined the case. That was really the narrative that was out there, that it was he recanted, he saw FSG. Well, I didn't ever think that made any sense because I don't know how he would have mistaken FSG, a really older guy, for what ended up being old bridge guy sketch. And I found out, I later talked to a guy who was in the same Facebook group, Bridge of Lies. It was a Facebook group that was started by Doug Rice that he talked to him, and he was the one who brought FSG up to DP and said, "Hey, is this the guy you saw?" DP didn't even know who FSG was, and that was in March of 2020, a year after the sketch change. So
mhm,
if he changed because he saw FSG, why did he not know about him a year later? If he recanted before April 22nd, 2019, because he saw FSG, well, then why did he not know who he was in March 9th of 2020?
mhm,
See, none of that's ever made any sense. And so that was part of the reason that I started looking into it and trying to figure out why is there all this misinformation out there? Why is it, I can buy that he was with another girl and didn't want, but we're talking about a double murder here, okay? I mean, come on. We're talking about two little girls who were found slaughtered on the side of a hill and, or by the creek, and he's covering because he wasn't with his fiance. I mean,
mhm.
look, I know everybody has different values and sensibilities and all that, and so I'm not gonna. But again, there's just a lot of things about it that are really hard to believe, and so that's why I started pursuing what's the real story there about those first 2 years. Who did he really see? Did he see anybody? Because he claims the girl he was with saw nothing. He saw the guy good enough to do a sketch, but the girl saw nothing.
Mhm.
And I mean,
And that was because they were arguing, or
yeah, okay, that was the story. Again, you gotta decide whether any of that is really what happened or not. Is that just a way to explain why she didn't see? I mean,
yeah.
because I've seen where he said that he wasn't arguing with anybody, and but I've also seen where he says he did a sketch that was an Old Bridge guy, and then I've seen where he said, "Oh, I didn't do a sketch at all." Why so many stories? Why so many versions? I mean, there's one truth, right? There's one truth. There's one thing that happened that day.
Yeah, sure.
And so that was, and I don't think uh, big fish, small ponds. Actually, is that your actual pick? She's talking about, yeah, that's me. That's me. I'm on a boat.
The girls here are gonna be hot, man. With your pic.
I, um, yeah, that's me. I don't know whether that's good, bad, indifferent, but yeah, that's me. I live, like I said, I live in an area where we're on boats fairly regularly. So
uh, I was thinking when you were talking about Flanner, share guy, about
mhm.
McCain. So what we know is that when he met Libby's father on the trails,
Right.
he said that he just saw a couple arguing under the bridge, on the bridge. What was the exact words he said?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked. Yeah, it was originally said it was under the bridge, and even Becky Patty said that it was under the bridge. It was,
I'm gonna stop you here,
yeah,
Skip. This is gonna be a real stupid question, but I have to ask you. Uh, when we say under the bridge, what
yeah.
does it mean? Because under the bridge is the river, is the creek, so it's impossible that the arguing arguing couple was there. Under the bridge is what is
Yes,
down the
yeah.
hill.
Look,
What is that?
yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I didn't really know. I just assumed, like I think most people did, that under the bridge was down by the water. Um, when I went and visited in 2022, in May of 2022, I was fortunate enough to have Julie Melvin, who I think most people know is a good friend of mine. She came out and met me and showed me the lay of the land. We walked all over. I was actually out there 2 days, but she came and met me the second day, and um, that it was great because I got to see all of the things that I'd heard about. I got to see, the scale of the property, the what it looks like from across the creek looking back. Could you have seen the girls? All of those questions that have been out there. Uh, and under the bridge there is a place, there's a little path that leads right next to the bridge that goes down up underneath it. Um, as a matter of fact, if I can send you a photo. It just goes up. It goes underneath the railroad. It's underneath the railroad. It says you. If I don't even know where you get underneath it. You could even stand up straight and without hitting your head. It's that close. But it's just a place where kids go, smoke cigarettes, smoke pot, whatever they do underneath it. So I think all of that was a little bit misleading. And I was wrong with that. I thought under the bridge meant down by the creek because I didn't know of that area, but until I saw it, and making that visit actually changed my perception of the case a lot, and because Julie showed me some things that I just wasn't familiar with, wasn't that were I think are important pieces to it, and so. Um, yeah, but to answer your question, it is just a little area you walk down to. It's just right up underneath the north side of the creek of the bridge, and you just kind of are underneath it. You're not even you've got doesn't even come close to going down by the water.
So does it mean that McCain was on the bridge at that time?
So yeah, how would he know somebody was under the bridge?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know. He would have to answer that. I mean, if you,
That,
I
that,
mean,
that means that means that he was really close to
he
the
would have
time
to.
of
Yeah,
the
he would have to
event,
be
you know.
right there, standing at the edge. Yeah.
And that I come back to my initial question. We don't talk a lot about that. And if he observed or if he heard a couple arguing at that time, he was right there. It's like,
Right.
you
He,
know,
he would have had to have been close. Yeah.
real close.
Yeah.
You were talking about Julie. How did you got in
But here,
contact
here, here. Let
with
me
Julie?
let me say this. Let me say
Yeah.
this. I don't mean to interrupt, but
No,
how
go ahead.
were so if they were arguing, where were they arguing? He said he saw bridge guy at 3:15 on the trails near the trail crossing, right? Because he parked at the mirrors, and the reason she didn't see him was because they were arguing.
Hmm.
McCain says they're arguing under the bridge. So
Right.
were they arguing the whole damn time they were out there? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Again, there's so many things about that don't line up. They don't add up. I mean, they were arguing on the trail at the trail crossing, or were they arguing under the bridge? And
Yeah.
why does not and why does again why does none of this make sense? And again, I look, I know people are going to say, well, I know you may be right about what you're saying, Skip, and this and that, but I don't think it has any relevance. It does have relevance because it shows the amount of misinformation was out there and who's providing that information. And when you consider that there's 70 days lost of witness testimony, and there's having trouble getting discovery, it starts making you wonder where that information is coming from, or misinformation.
Right. Um, how many times how many times you've been in Delphi, Skip?
Just once. I went I was there Memorial Day weekend of 2022.
Okay. And
Spent two.
how did you get in contact with Julie?
What's that?
You were talking about Julie Melvin. How did you get in
Yeah.
contact with her?
I met her through intermediaries, someone that I was friends with that she knew introduced us. And that's how we started corresponding.
Yeah.
Yeah, she came over the second day. I went out there. I went to the trails the first day on I guess it was Friday, and then spent a couple hours out there and just looked around. And the funny thing was, I guess I didn't get a great perspective because couple hours I was out there that day, and then the 2 or 3 hours that she and I were out there the next day, we didn't see a single person.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 70 degrees, sunny, no humidity. It was perfect. Didn't see
Really?
any, didn't see a soul out there for 5, 6 hours in 2 days. Didn't see a soul.
Wow.
But there were 70 people out there that day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, man.
Maybe there was. Maybe 40 degrees and on a Monday is a lot more appealing than 70 degrees on a holiday weekend. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know. Look, I don't mean to sound sarcastic or skeptical, but there's a lot of things that have happened in this case. It's kind of hard not to make you that way.
Yeah. When I was listening to the True Crime Garage episodes with you, the captain, I think it was the captain. He made a comment about when flannel shirt guy said that there was someone well, when he was talking about the arguing couple
Yeah.
that in his mind it was maybe a rich guy with the girls.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think that was came from them being down by the creek when you consider under the bridge. I think that was the assumption that, and like he had never been there at that time. I don't know if he's ever been, but I think he has. But and that was I think what most people assumed, and I certainly did, because I didn't know there was an area you could go up underneath the bridge. There was a little trail and a spot, a little sitting spot down there. So I think that just the proximity of it, that puts him close to it puts him close to the crime scene,
Mm-hmm.
And so anybody that close to the crime scene is, I think should definitely be spoken, And the sad part of this whole thing is that when I was on Dan's show and laid out did the presentation about what really happened the first 2 years of the investigation, all of that, all of the 70 days lost is part of all of the people that are involved in that presentation are part of the 70 days lost.
Oh, that's really unacceptable, man. How can you lost 17 days of information that
Well, and then say it's not even relevant.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
it may not be relevant for what you're trying to accomplish,
yeah, exactly.
but
That's
I still think it's relevant.
if it's not aligned with your narrative, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
They're not gonna they're not gonna like that. Yeah, I know what you mean. Uh, do we know what DP was wearing? What were his clothes on the 13th?
I don't know.
No.
I've never heard anybody say. Yeah.
Okay. And do we know if he was part of the searches? He was he a searcher?
I never heard him say whether he was or not.
No. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
we can go through if you want to talk about the search the search at some point because I've been pretty vocal about that. We can talk about that if you want to at some point.
Yeah. And I don't know if I was looking for that video today. I remember there was a video showing DP. It was like a school project he made. It was a weird video, and he was on the bridge with some girl. Do you
Right.
know about that?
Yeah.
And I cannot find that video anymore on YouTube. It was like it disappeared.
Yeah, I think it got taken down. I wasn't a part of that. Well, I was a part of it because of the theory, but I wasn't the person who found that or put it together. But I thought it was interesting. The person who did it, I thought it did a good job, and I thought it was an interesting. Just because I think it was because it gave you several different aspects of what people have been looking for. It gave you a potential gate to look at. Although I think that's been overblown because walking on railroad ties doesn't doesn't tell you how someone really walks, but it did give you a potential, look at that, to look how this person looked from a camera angle that was maybe similar, those kind of things. So I thought it was well done in that aspect, or that respect. But I wasn't part of it.
Yeah, that was interesting because I was trying to look for that video,
I
and
can,
I wanted to show
I've
it
got it.
here.
I've got it. I can send it to you.
Ah, yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thanks, man.
no problem.
And do you have any other video of interest, something like that, or not?
I've got several videos of when I was there. Um,
Okay.
and it shows just some things that we looked at, discovered when we were there. Not discovered, but some things that Julie showed me that I thought were interesting, and certainly it could be pertinent to the investigation. Again, it goes. We're talking about the search. There's actually a path, a clear path that goes from about 25 to 30 feet from the north end of the bridge. From the edge of the bridge, it's about 30 feet from where it starts and goes right down to the crime scene. She took me down it. It took us about 10 minutes max to walk down this hill to get to where the crime scene is, where the girls were found. Yet nobody looked on. Nobody looked. I mean, they knew that the girls were dropped off at the Mears lot, and they knew they were headed to the bridge. This path is right in between that. I mean, you would
Hmm.
if you were looking and started your search and said, okay, well, we know they were here. They walked toward here. Okay, well, there's a path that goes right. Let's take that path. Because I mean, it certainly is less resistant than walking through thicket or I don't. It's just there's a lot of things about that search that are. I don't understand why they weren't found. I know that on the down the hill. CNN or headline news show, they asked Barbara asked Carter, "Hey, why weren't the girls found?" He said, "I'd rather not comment on that." Um, why? What happened? I mean, what? I mean, what? I'm not. I'm not. Look, I'm not saying that the girls weren't there. Somebody looked at the area and they weren't there. I don't know the circumstances. I don't. I'd find it hard to believe that nobody went down that path to that area, though.
Hmm.
I do. It would have been the first place. For me, when I saw it, I mean, I was shocked. Because I'd never seen anybody. I since had found a couple of videos people did, but I was shocked that there could be such an easy way to get to where they were. Because another thing that I thought was strange was there's four ways you can get to where the girls were found. You can come by the creek, you can go down this path, you can come through the cemetery, come off Ron Logan's property. Um,
What? What?
the easiest way to get there is this path by far. By far.
What is the easiest way? Repeat that.
The path from the
The path.
trail to it's the easiest by far. It's the easiest way to get to where they were found. I mean, look, the other one you got to get in a boat, get the creek, do all that kind of stuff, or walk across it and all that kind of stuff. This one just goes straight down to it. You go and the path from up off of Ron Logan's property. It's really steep. That would be. I mean, it's accessible, obviously, but it would be more difficult than coming because you're walking against along the side of the cliff there when you're walking on this path, as opposed to walking straight down it from Logan's house.
Yeah, I understand your point. So you think that it's really unlikely that the perpetrator, this guy, and the girls cross the creek, right?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, when I first got there, the first thing I was standing there, I was just out there by myself, and there was nobody around. And I remember looking across the bridge and thinking, and kind of trying to picture the girls. And I remember thinking, if Libby had taken that photo, nobody would have ever known the girls were there. I mean, there would be no reason to think they ever crossed the creek, right? Because there's no evidence that was found on that other side, right? So, except maybe a shoe, and if the shoe could have been thrown or whatever. So there would have been no reason. And again, when they put the blue flags up along that path from the crime scene back up to that path back up to the trail, marking where they believed he exited, they knew that path was significant. It just I mean, it just doesn't make any sense why they weren't found. I don't know. I can't answer it. Can't make
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. There's a lot of questions that needs to be answered, man. It's crazy.
It really
Uh,
is.
oh, when we talk about the alibi of the DP,
Mm-hmm.
what do we know about that?
Just the only thing I know was that he was there. He was, I think, got there at 3 o'clock. Saw someone that looked that was the person that was responsible, that he was responsible for authoring this old bridge guy sketch at 3:15, and then he was on. And this is another kind of twist to this. This whole thing is so intertwined. But that he got a text he was sitting on the bridge when he got a text from his mother. So that doesn't say anything about under the bridge. He said he's sitting on the bridge at 3:19, yet we're led to believe that he wasn't in the geofence information.
I understand.
I mean, getting a text means you were getting cellular service, right? You couldn't get
Yeah,
a text unless you had cellular service. Well, how does that not show up on the geofence? Is that why they want it thrown out? Is that one of the reasons why they want it thrown out? Or they don't want it discussed? Because it brings in something that could potentially be probable cause. I mean, reasonable doubt. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's something that only McClellan knows. But I mean, God, there's so much. I mean, it's just unbelievable the way way things have transpired in this case.
yeah, it's crazy, man. I just want to make a pause here because we have a comment from True Crime Web, Steve. Boss, I love you, man. You're one of the best here. I'm so honored you're here, man, commenting. So he says, I walked that path several times. I don't know how obvious the path was at the time of crime, as the Monon Trail has been improved since the crime. Good comment.
The trail has been improved. The path, from what I was told, the path is similar to what it was in 2017.
Yeah. And I don't know if I already asked you this question or not. Do we know if DP was related or connected to Ron Logan? There was any kind of relationship that we know?
I've never heard of any. No, I know he has there's connections with people that are involved in this case because of family and you're talking about a really small town. I mean, the chances of people knowing each other are pretty good. So, but now I've never heard of any. I know there was a guy. There's a guy involved. Got involved in the case.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't give out his name. His initials are CB. He was a friend of DP's. He kind of was. He did a lot of DP's talking early on. Now he was a very good friend of Logan.
Okay, interesting.
So if that was connection, maybe not. Yeah. I don't know of any direct
speculation, but it's still a possibility, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know of any direct relation. or
Yeah.
direct connection.
So today, what do you think? I don't know. First question: what do you think it was the motivation of DP to change his story multiple times? Let's say.
Don't know. I mean, I
No.
really don't. No idea. I mean, it could, because there's so many different versions. That's the problem, and there were so many. Um, it's funny to go back and look at some of the older stuff, and you see interactions between people, and people trying to convince others that he saw FSG, and people saying, "Oh, well, the story doesn't make sense." This was before I was even involved, but the story didn't make sense. Well, I'm convinced he saw FSG. His story still doesn't make sense. Well, I'm still convinced he saw FSG. Um, all there's a lot of that out there. All of that is, I don't, does that go, any of that go to motivation? I don't know. I don't. There was obviously a reason people wanted to keep that quiet or keep it out. I don't know. Like I said, I would like, so for the same reason I'm okay with the confessions being right. The defense will have their opportunity to provide context and bring in experts for that, right? To impeach it, contest it, whatever. Why can't we know the truth about everything? I mean, why can't we know the truth about everything? I mean, why? I mean, why shouldn't the entirety of the investigation be important? Not just the last month or last year, the last whatever. I think for me, the entirety of the investigation is important because I think it provides a perspective to what actually was going on.
Mhm.
And shows some potentially what law enforcement were thinking, and because of how they acted. And again I go back to, you don't change sketches for just, why are there narratives out, why does there have to be narratives out there, false narratives put out with every time one of these stories that they don't want you to believe is put out? Betsy Blair insisted on it. Richard Allen after he saw the discovery. Well, now we realize none of that's true. So why is that important for somebody to put that out there?
Yeah, I hear you, man.
I mean, why is the misinformation been more important than the real information?
Some strategies on. I don't know, man. So I don't have the answer either.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's
It's a
I
very
mean,
good question, man.
it's rhetorical. I know.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm not. Look, I'm not. I don't have an opinion on whether could Richard Allen be bridge guy. Yeah. Here's another thing I don't really get is I don't know that he is. Again, I think it comes down to what law enforcement's done. Do you believe? But I don't understand why there can't be. There's a couple of things that aren't mutually exclusive. There's a poorly investigated case / incompetence, versus corruption, whatever, however you want to put it, can still be, and Richard Allen being bridge guy could still, both of those things could still be true. Why is it important to protect what law enforcement's done? I mean, if there's one thing I know for sure in this case, I don't know that much, but the one thing I'm sure, they screwed this up, and they screwed it up major. And not only that, they've done things to protect themselves, and they've done things to cover up things. And that, for me, that's not right.
No, for sure. Understand pretty well, man. Your point. Um, I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions. I ask to every guest I have here just to know your feeling about that. Do you think there's one actor, multiple actors here? What's your feeling about this?
Um, I don't know. I think it would have been, well, I don't know. I have mixed emotions about it, simply because um, I was told by somebody who has never been wrong about anything. I won't bring his name up because he's a friend of mine, and some people will know who I'm talking about. And he has a relative that's a prosecutor in a neighboring county. He
Okay.
told me that a detective that with the ISP who was on the case early on said that he knew about Libby being dragged early on, and said he didn't think he could do what the person did. And this guy was a pretty big guy, so I mean that that brings up that. But again, maybe that information is not exactly correct. I don't know, but when you think about it, that kind of brings up, well, could Richard Allen have done it if he couldn't? Maybe if and he's still involved, was there another person involved? Um, I don't know. I really haven't. I won't say I haven't considered. I've considered it a lot, but I just don't. I really haven't come up with an opinion on it, to be honest.
Yeah, okay, I understand. And what's your opinion if you have one about the crime scene? I mean, the fact one of the girls was naked, Libby, and Abby was redressed, or he redressed herself with Libby's clothes. We don't know that, but what do you think about that? Do you have
I think, I,
any
yeah,
thought?
I think there's one scenario people haven't considered is, or at least I haven't heard anybody consider it. Um, is that we've heard the crime scene was chaotic, and and we've always been led to believe they crossed the creek, and in the photos supposedly Libby's hair looks wet and this and that. Um, is it possible that they got across to the crime scene, however they've got across there, and then Libby took off, and that's how she ended up in the water?
Mhm.
He thought he chased after her and then pulled her and got her back up on the bank. Um, the one thing that they always said was there were a lot of reenactments done of the abduction aspect of the case, but they said nobody was ever right. Well, that's one scenario I've never heard anybody offer up, is that maybe she took off once they got on the other side, and that's how her clothes ended up in the creek. Um, and that may answer the other question you had about the redressing or whatever, and why she didn't have any clothes on, because we know she was dragged a certain distance, so wet clothes and that kind of thing. And there's no sexual anything sexual nature happened. So was that because he was it because of the wet clothes, or because of that? And it was something that, like I said, I'm just throwing it out there. I think it's something that people need to consider, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Good point, man. This one is one of the questions that makes me crazy, man. And why I don't understand. Why do you think the killer or the murderer, he left the Libby's phone at the crime scene, and he didn't try to throw it to the river or to the creek or to destroy it? What do you think about that? I really, that makes me crazy, man.
I think the first thing I would think would be, uh, he didn't realize he was being videotaped, or he didn't realize he was being videotaped. So he would have. I mean, I guess that would be the first thing that would be, well, why? What's the significance of the phone? Why would he? Why, like you said, why wouldn't he destroy it, throw it in the creek, whatever? Now we don't know for sure. I mean, we know what they said about the uh, where the phone was. Not exactly. At least I haven't heard exactly the condition of the phone. Maybe he did try to step on it. Maybe whatever he tried to do. But maybe that was part of the staging as well. I don't know. I agree that it's a hard question to answer, but I think it does. I think it probably does answer that he didn't think he was being videotaped, because I think the phone would have been destroyed for sure if he would have known that he was being. She had her camera out taking images of him.
Mhm.
But other than that, I really don't. I don't know.
Yeah,
I know he. I know he wouldn't
I
take
was
it.
expecting that answer anyway.
Oh, I know you were expecting or weren't.
No, I was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that he wouldn't. Obviously, he wouldn't have taken it with him because he wouldn't have wanted any kind of tracking. Um, but other than maybe not realizing he was being videotaped, that's really the only thing it kind of tells me.
Hmm. And
I do think though that I think the contents of her phone are going to be pretty important.
yeah, for sure. And not only her phone, Richard Allen or DP or the phones in general. You know
Yeah. Oh,
what?
yeah. Question. No doubt. Yeah. All of the phone data is going to be very important.
And that's what makes me a little bit mad about the recent developments in this case, because the geofencing data was not allowed to be brought to the case. So I don't understand that. That's crazy, man. That's
Yeah.
evidence.
The verbiage in that was a little bit ambiguous in terms of he says nothing. Well, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was not allowed to have for the geofencing to be brought up and or it's always that's a typical legal kind of writing and or not what's the other one they use a lot and not crap again but it's always they're trying to make it more plain and they actually make it more ambiguous so
Yeah, no, and
but
usually the prosecution, they use the geofencing data during the process to make their cases. So it doesn't make sense, man. It's so weird. I don't get it. I think
yeah
in my
because that's
opinion,
their evidence, that's the state's evidence, right? I mean
exactly.
you're wanting
What
you're
the fuck
wanting
is
to
this?
throw out your own evidence, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
no,
I mean
man.
that brings up. I mean, I know people say, well, they're going to replace it with this because it's better, all that kind of stuff. It still says something. It still says something. I was led to believe. I was told by someone who is a prosecution person or whatever. I hate to label people, but that the three people that were Cheyenne, Shelby, and RA were the only three people shown in the geofence. Well,
Repeat that. Repeat that.
why would they want to throw that out? Why would they want to throw out RA and two young gals were the only three people? That would be beneficial to the prosecution. You wouldn't want that thrown out. That would be the
Hmm.
defense maybe trying to get that thrown out, but it's the prosecution. So why? I know I can look. I know I keep asking why, but there's so much. There's still a zillion questions we have that are unanswered, and unfortunately, I don't know that we're ever going to get the answers. I really don't.
Yeah, same here, man. Coming back to the crime scene, what about the sticks? I think that they were not randomly placed on the guards. To me, it was made on purpose. What do you think about that? And also, not only that, one thing that is also turning always in my mind, the fact that the sticks were placed above the necks,
Yeah.
like covering the necks. Do you have any take about that? Any thought?
Well, again, it goes back to that. Why does there have to be narratives put out when something like that's out there? I would say from what I saw them. So I'll tell you what I think. I don't think it was to cover anything. I don't know how anybody could come to that conclusion that you were trying to disguise or hide. Or I mean, if anybody walked up on the scene, they'd say, "Oh my God, there's two young gals and they've got a couple of sticks on them." They
Hmm.
wouldn't. They wouldn't say, "Oh, if it hadn't been for those sticks, I'd have never seen them." I mean, it wasn't for that. Whether they were placed intentionally to create some kind of a pattern or some kind of ritualistic thing, I don't know. I don't know enough about that to adequately speak about it. But I agree that it that most of what we have heard is probably not. I don't want to say not right, but I certainly didn't see anything about trying to cover anybody up. I thought it was either intentional because of the way they were placed, or uh, but I didn't, or maybe it wasn't, but I didn't think there was anything about trying to disguise and the girls are being covered up. So I know. Again, I know that changes all the time. I know it changes from, hey, it was, hey, there was crime scene was staged, and then, well, no, it was an undoing. You know, again, those are things that all maybe I pay too much attention to shit, and I just and it drives me crazy. But it's just I see so much contradiction out there that it's I don't know, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, no, no, same here. A lot of contradiction, contradictory statements,
Yeah,
confusion. That's the problem here, man.
yeah.
Uh, any question I didn't ask you? Something that you wanted to say about your theory or about the case? Something that I didn't ask you?
No, just I think probably just that I don't really have a theory. One of the things I noticed when I first started following this case is how POI centric this case is. I mean, it was like everybody has a POI, and it's a town of 3,000 people. And there's like 100 of them, and most cases just have a few. So that's another observation. But I think that I don't have a belief. I'm I've taken the approach that I'm just going to wait for the trial. Let's see what's there, what's allowed in, what's not allowed. I hope it doesn't turn into a battle of legal tactics, a battle of experts, but I think it's going to. And I think a lot of people are going to walk away, whether it is there's an exoneration or whether there's a conviction, unhappy and unfulfilled uh, when this is over. And and,
Hmm.
and when that is, with the way some of the stuff that's happened and the potential for appeal, who knows when that will be.
Yeah, man. Hello, criminality. Nice to have you here.
Hello,
Uh,
Teresa.
yeah, Teresa is awesome, man.
I'm sorry
Uh,
if I don't. I'm doing this through the app, so I don't get to see who all's out there. But so if I missed anybody, I apologize.
oh no, don't worry, man. So just to wrap up this show, this live, like today, at the end of the day, what's the conclusion or what's in your mind about your whole theory?
What's my
The
biggest takeaway?
yeah,
Um, my biggest takeaway is like I mentioned earlier. There's really only one thing that I know for sure, and that is based on what I've seen, what I've read, all of the stuff that's been put out is that, and all of the stuff that I've researched is that law enforcement messed this case up so bad, so to the point where they've had to create narratives and cover things up. And I don't know if it's for public image or what the reason is, but it comes down to, okay, now you're telling a scenario and saying, well, you're supposed to believe all of this.
mhm.
I think people are going to have a problem with that. I think that's what is. I think it's going to come down. I mean, the Odin thing and all that, I think is important. I know that was important to the defense, or at least they seem to be, with the Franks memorandum and all that. But I think it's going to come down to uh, how law enforcement has acted and performed in this case. And again, I keep talking about things being normalized, but it just the when people normalize when people I mean, bad behavior and incompetence has been normalized so long that it's honestly skewed the perspective and perception of this entire community. Nobody knows what to think, and it's because of that. It's because of the, oh well, that happens all the time. No, it doesn't.
Yeah,
Schedule changes rarely happen. 70 days of loss, it never should never happen. Cases would get thrown out for that,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. You're
And
right.
so, you asked earlier about competence versus corruption. I don't know. I mean, for me, competence leads to the corruption, because incompetence it is the mistakes where corruption is the cover up.
Yeah, no, and we can stay the whole night talking about those incompetence elements, the video that was lost in the Marathon gas station, a lot of we're not gonna stop, man.
Yeah, I
The
know it's a lot. Yeah, a lot of blame being thrown around too. You know, and within law enforcement agencies, which you don't see very often. You don't see a state police agency blaming the federal agency very often for stuff like that. You know, well, again, why? Why? I mean, is it about because of public image? I know we have. Elected officials involved in this. I know um, we have a lot, and this is probably something that hasn't been discussed enough. A lot of monies, federal monies, that are on the table for the ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children Unit, and public funding, and how that all works. And that's a component in this as well. And so when you have elected officials and you have public funding available on the line,
yeah,
it's maybe
no,
people
no.
maybe people become more image conscious than they would normally.
Yeah, 100%, man. Uh, Man, I don't have any other question for you. I just wanted to thank you for being here. It was awesome to have you here, man.
Well,
And
I appreciate the invite. Sometimes I get blamed for talking in circles and not express. I know I don't express myself great all the time. I'm aware of that.
but
But
I
if
think
I did any of that tonight, I apologize. I just
no, I
have a
think
lot of information
we
in my
don't
head.
we don't have the choice because this case is like that. This case is in circles. When you get to
It
some
is.
point, you have to come back to the other point. That it, we have to talk in circles. We have no option. It's the case is like that.
Well,
So
I appreciate your kindness on that. I do, and I
no,
appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the invite for sure. I enjoyed it.
and I hope we can do something together in the future, man. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thank you, man.
Thanks,
I
Cryptix.
know,
I appreciate it. Yeah, I look forward to speaking to you again.
yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
Skip, and thank you everyone here in the chat.
Yeah, thanks
Uh,
everyone.
See you soon, guys. Thanks.
That's good. Bye.
Ciao.